There's a story I wish I'd never found. No heroes, no rescue, just a woman on a doorstep at dawn, her hand frozen mid-reach toward a safety that never came. The night before was noise and fists and fear. Now, only the wind moves. A clay jar lies cracked beside her. Somewhere inside, a door bolt slides shut. The street doesn't echo prayers or screams, only the sound of ordinary life starting again. It's the kind of scene that shouldn't exist in holy pages. Yet God leaves it there, unflinching, a wound preserved in ink. Because this isn't a story about monsters far away. It's about what happens when decency sleeps, when fear wins, and silence feels easier than courage. The longer you stare, the harder it is to look away. Maybe that's why God never edited it out. If we skip this story, faith stays safe, predictable. We get to keep a God who cleans up every mess before it touches us. But Judges 19 won't let us. It drags holiness into the dirt and asks what kind of people we've become. Because this isn't just one night in Gibeah. It's a mirror held to every generation that names itself God's people. It's every church that hides abuse to protect its name. Every friend who stays quiet because truth costs too much. To ignore it is to keep believing the danger is out there, in the godless, the violent, the lost. But this story whispers the truth. The danger lives closer. It starts in pulpits and living rooms, in hearts that stay silent when they should speak. We don't read this chapter for answers. We read it to remember what happens when fear becomes faith's counterfeit, when devotion loses its courage, and holiness forgets how to love. Maybe that's why this story begins so quietly, with a man and a woman on a road, looking for somewhere that feels safe. The road winds through the hill country of Ephraim. Two travelers moving through the dust like shadows, a Levite and his concubine. No crowd, no witnesses, just the long sound of sandals against stone. She walks behind him, quiet, not by choice, by custom. In that world, her place was always a few steps back, close enough to follow, too far to matter. As dusk deepens, the question of where to rest becomes urgent. Ahead lies Gibeah, an Israelite town, familiar soil, their own people. The Levite looks at the foreign city they passed and thinks, we'll be safer among believers. They wait in the square. Faces pass. Doors stay closed. Until an old man sees them and says, "Come, my house is yours." For a brief, fragile moment, kindness enters the story. It feels like hope, but hope doesn't stay long in Gibeah. Safety is an illusion when goodness learns to look away. Night falls heavy. What began as hospitality turns into siege. Outside, the rhythm of fists against wood. Inside, shallow breathing, fear settling into the floorboards. A voice from the dark demands the man be handed over. It's Sodom all over again, but this time it isn't pagans at the door, it's Israel, the old man pleads. The Levite trembles. Then, in a moment too cruel to explain, he pushes the woman out instead. The door closes, the noise swells, and the night devours her. No thunder, no divine interruption, just the sound of violence where protection should have lived. When fear leads, love hides, and cowardice always finds someone else to bleed for its safety. Then, nothing. The night exhales. Somewhere, a rooster stirs before the light. The street is still, but the silence feels alive, like it's keeping score. Dawn comes slow, grey light spilling over the threshold. The door creaks open. The Levite steps out, looks down, and finds her there, hands reaching toward a home that never opened. He says only 4 words. "Get up. Let's go." But she doesn't move. There's no angel, no fire, no voice from heaven to make sense of the night. Only the quiet. A quiet so deep it feels like judgment. He lifts her body onto the donkey, rides home through a landscape that refuses to look back. The sun climbs higher. Doors open. Markets stir. Life goes on around the body that faith abandoned. No one speaks. No one asks. The nation's silence becomes God's mirror. What they will call judgment later began as indifference now. Later, he will divide her into 12 pieces, sending fragments of her to every tribe in Israel. A nation will wake up to horror delivered to its doorstep. Such a thing has never been seen or done, because some silences echo louder than any scream. Why would God keep a story like this? Why not hide it, bury it beneath psalms and miracles? Spare us the shame of seeing what his people became. Maybe because pretending holiness means clean hands only breeds denial. God doesn't edit out our cruelty, he exposes it, so we can't keep lying to ourselves about who we are. We want scripture to comfort, but sometimes it confronts. We want it to protect our image, but sometimes it holds the mirror until we finally look. This story survives because forgetting it would be easier. And faith, when it gets too easy, stops being honest. So God leaves the stain on the page, not to glorify the horror, but to remind us grace only means something when we've seen what we need saving from. Maybe that's why scripture keeps the stories we'd rather erase, not to shame us, but to show us what silence still costs when we repeat it in our own time. Maybe the only thing to do after hearing this is to stop pretending we're different, to let the ache settle instead of explaining it away, to ask, not with words, but with silence, what kind of people we've become when someone's suffering no longer stirs us. Because Judges 19 isn't about them, it's about us. Let the story ache in you, let it ask, when have I stayed safe while someone else suffered? When did my silence sound like approval? Maybe that's what redemption starts with, not the denial of guilt, but the courage to face it. Because maybe faith isn't proven by how quickly we move on, but by how long we're willing to stay in the discomfort, in the questions, in the space where God once seemed silent. That's where honesty becomes worship, where mourning turns to mercy. God's silence in this story isn't absence, it's witness. I saw what you did, I saw what you ignored, and I still haven't looked away. That's the strange mercy buried in the horror, that even when his people lose their way, he doesn't erase the evidence. He leaves it so healing can begin where truth is finally faced. We want rescue in the moment, but God often gives revelation instead, the kind that humbles, the kind that rebuilds. And if he can bear to leave this story in his book, maybe he can bear to stay with us in ours. Because the silence we fear most might also be the space where mercy begins to speak again. Maybe that's what grace sounds like, not thunder, but breath returning after we thought it was gone. Some stories stay because they're meant to. They don't comfort, they confront. They hold the light steady until we can face what it reveals. Judges 19 is one of those stories, a wound God refused to hide. And maybe that's the gift, that even our worst chapters can still become places where truth and trembling grace finally meet.